I think it's because me growing up in the South, there isn't too many platforms that you see black men receiving any sort of exposure. The way I say it is like you either have to be a football player or you got to be a rapper to make it out as a black man from the South. And if you're a black woman, you damn near have to be Beyonce. And so the difficulties for us to receive our exposure for people who are often neglected and don't have a voice in the mainstream audience, I think that ultimately, along with my love that I've had for football as a kid, growing up in Texas, it's faith, family, and football. That's kind of what's breed into us. So I think those two things, and I think the maturation as I continue to grow and understanding the platform and the possibilities of telling these people's stories, because all they ever see from those black men from the South that play football is when they can, rush for 150 yards or when they, throw for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, but they never understand the makings of the person and who they represent, the social economical upbringing that they came from, the region that, that their mentality, their identity comes from. And so a lot of it was focused on black identity in the South. And that's kind of an emphasis that I had last year. And it's also shifted over towards other sports and stories that I've written on Paul George, Tobias Harris. I'm cooking up something right now with Giannis Antetokounmpo, in which a week after he won the NBA MVP, I flew out to Greece with him and was able to tour around the city and the neighborhood in which he grew up in. And me being a first-generation American as well, my parents came from Eritrea. That's another area in which identity-wise, I can relate to and also want to share the perspective and a story that most people don't understand or will be able to understand. And so I understand the privilege that I have being in this position and the burden that I also carry as a black man from the South who grew up in Section 8, who grew up as a first-generation American, everything that I carry with my perspectives. And it's not necessarily me projecting my perspectives onto the subjects that I write about, but those perspectives open up a different mindset for me to ask better questions that will get people to understand these people and what they've gone through in a better situation, excuse me.
Of course, because we always see athletes, especially top athletes, as these superheroes, as these perfect guys. And I think the more and more we learn, we see more and more headlines like these are just people. And I think we have to, and that's why the work you do is really important. I think we have to start seeing them as humans because we hold them to this really impossible standard.
Yeah.
And we don't know anything about how they got there.
And it's for celebrity status in general, and I think one of the things I always kind of remind myself too is that there's beauty in our imperfections, because sometimes our imperfections are also our biggest strengths as well. Like for me, not coming from money taught me how to survive and taught me how to make something out of nothing. And when you're a journalist, as I'm sure you can relate as well, when you're out in the field and when you're reporting or you got to be very nimble. You have to be very fluid and flexible. And those kind of teachings I learned at an early age, just trying to figure out how we're going to eat something for dinner. What are we going to eat for dinner? What are we going to eat for lunch? And so that kind of mindset, that mentality that people will often view as flawed because you are poor, because you don't have anything to eat, now is a strength of mine when I'm in this profession and in this field, because I've been working on this now for 20-something years, where other people are just learning this as they get into this profession. And so that's something I always try to keep in my mind and trying to lead with empathy as much as I possibly can and trying to be as sensitive as I possibly can to people's upbringings and where they come from. But I agree with you, and I think it's something that, I think if younger kids are able to understand it now at an earlier age, they're able to understand that they don't have to live up to this false perception or perspective that they have to be perfect, because no one's going to be perfect. We're all flawed people.